In light of my chat with today's guest, I did a little bit of research and found that most companies face huge challenges with data quality. Here's a little of what I discovered. B2B data decays at a rate of 70% per year, contributing to unreliable data health for 60% of companies. Poor quality data costs companies approximately 12.9 US dollars, I'm sorry, 12.9 million US dollars annually. And this financial burden arises from ineffective targeting, lower conversion rates, and increased cost per acquisition due to outdated or inaccurate data. Data inaccuracy is also a top challenge for 87% of B2B sales and marketing teams, leading to weakened campaign performance, low engagement rates, and compromised ROI. Also, improving data quality is a top priority for 66% of B2B marketers aiming to enhance their go to market strategies. So, how does this all work in a manner that we can confidently say drives revenue growth by addressing these issues of data quality? I'll be asking our guest to elaborate on that in just a moment. But first, hello and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast brought to you by Sproutwood.com. I'm Vinay Koshy, and our guest is Ryan Yackel. Ryan, you are a senior an IBM product strategy leader. You're quite passionate about the issues of data quality and reliability and solving these problems through data observability. Now, before IBM, I believe you led go-to-market programs at high-growth startups in software, test automation, DevOps, and cybersecurity as well. I'm curious, Ryan, was there a particular incident or event that triggered your interest in data quality and reliability?
I would say I've always been interested in going to startups and being a part of high growth companies for probably the past decade, as you mentioned. And so the my journey to where I got into where I'm currently at, which is IBM Databand, which is a data observability company, and we can talk about what they do there. But before Databand, I was at two other high growth startup companies. One was in test automation, as you mentioned, QA Symphony Tricentis, and then the other one in cybersecurity and Key Factor. And so, what attracted me to, I would say, to Databand and into this space, and specifically data quality, was that what I found was that there's a lot of the same problems that were going on in software quality, which was my previous company called Tricentis, where we dealt with things like increasing your test automation rate, making sure that you're catching bugs before they go to production. All that revolves around software application development, the software development lifecycle. And what I realized is like you could, with Databand, what I found out was that this data quality problem and data reliability problem is very similar to what's going on with software reliability and software quality. And so Databand, what I saw was just like every company I look for to go and be a part of is, are they disrupting a space? Are they an emerging tech in the space? It's exciting to talk about. And data quality seemed to be basically 5 to 7 years behind the software quality space. And that's where Databand fits in.
Given your journey to date, what would you say would be your personal area of strength
You're talking about for the company Databand or
for
itself?
you personally?
My I guess I'm not really understanding the question. Sorry.
Sure.
Elaborate.
What would you say is your personal area of strength?
Oh, you mean as a
Yeah,
marketer?
yeah.
Yeah. So as a marketer, I would say my area of strength is from the discipline of product marketing. And it's coming from I used to be a sales engineer back in the day, and basically as a sales engineer, what I was able to do was I was in a full life cycle of the sale. So I would come to client calls, go to client meetings, do presentations over WebEx or Zoom or whatever it was at the time back in 2016, 17 era. And I would do the support angle for the deal. I would do the last presentation for the deal. I would do the qualifications for the deal. I would do all those things. And what got me into product marketing was that to be a really good sales engineer, you have to basically be able to talk about the product in a way that conveys value. You have to show the technical aspects of the product so that you're talking to developers if you need to, or highly technical people. And then you also need to be able to convey not just like the value of the product and the technical pieces of the product, but also paint the vision of how the company is going to be better than the competition. because in the spaces that we're in the SaaS space, it's just constantly flooded with companies. And so you've got to paint the picture, not just how great the product is, how it's solving the problems, technically how's the user going to use it, but what makes this a good bet for that customer to then be a part of your company, that you have a partnership
Mhm.
for the long term and not churn and have. So in all those things come out like positioning and messaging and competitive analysis and copywriting, and what kind of themes you want to go to market with, how do we talk about the product. And the marketing team was constantly coming to me for all these ideas. And so what had happened was I had carved out my own role to be in product marketing, and that's where I started to really guide the demand gen team and run sales enablement for QA Symphony and Tricentis. And so from there, I was at Tricentis for probably 5.5 years, ran global teams and product marketing across Vienna and Vietnam and all these different countries. It was a lot of fun. And then I moved over to Key Factor to be VP of product marketing over there, where I ran the enterprise and IoT side of the go to market. And so what was great about that was that there was two different spaces that we had to basically cater towards. It was the enterprise side and the IoT side. And my team was one of those guys in the go to market team of, what events are we going to go to, how are we going to run our ABX programs, how are we going to message on the website, what's our SEO strategy, all of that stuff rolled in. And
Mm.
with a product marketing background, it's really helpful because you're basically the person that everyone goes to get the expertise.
Mm.
And so I like to talk about my strength is basically product marketing, OG, um, cater towards high growth, go to market strategy teams and enabling strategy teams. And we're basically like the headlights on the car. If the car is marketing, we're like basically the headlights on the car to make sure the car is driving in the right direction. And at night, or if headwinds come in, or rain falls in, or you're on a windy road, you could have all these great tactics, but if you don't know where you're going, then the tactics are going to fail and you're going to crash. So that's why I like to how I phrase myself of what is my superpower to be anchored in a product marketing discipline.
Thank you for that. And I wonder if you could elaborate just a little bit more. And I'll ask you this question. In that area of strength, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
Yeah, I would say that what businesses should know is that the your overall sales narrative and your product narrative, your narrative design, as you want to call it, that
Mhm.
is way more important than you think it is. And when I get into having conversations with people on the side about what's wrong in their go to market, a lot of times it's a messaging and positioning and a more of a how are we different story.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily like a hey, we need to target this particular ad groups, or we need to do more content syndication, or we need to go to more events, or we need to spend more money in digital. Those are easy things to do. You just pump money into them and then you keep going to these different things. What I would say is that a lot of times companies don't take a step back and go, okay, do we have the right go to market message that's differentiated so that we can then activate these tactics in a way that's going to hook people in? And one of the things that I do with every company that I go to is that I develop a narrative design for the entire company. And usually that starts out with people saying to me, I think we already have messaging down. We already have positioning down. I say, this is a different way of doing it. Let me just bear with me. It's not going to take weeks to develop this message that we're going to go to market with. It's going to take maybe a few days. And trust me, I can iron this out. And narrative design is a framework where you start with a big change that's happening to your customers in the world that they can't control, the impact to that. So, what's happening that is putting pressure on them, both in the positive and in the negative way. And then the next step would be okay, based off that big change, how are they impacted? How are they adapting? And what's the old way of doing something that they have to change out of? So if the old way is the example for HubSpot would be like outbound marketing. The new way is inbound marketing. Or if the old way was fishing with nets,
Mhm.
so to say, spray and pray, the new way is fishing with spears for ABX. And then explaining how like those customers, how hard it is to adapt to this new way, and then positioning your company as the guide that's going to help them achieve this new way. And that's a really good way to frame out and basically name the old thing that you're the status quo that you're attacking against,
Mhm.
and phrase your company in a way to have a very different perspective. At QA Symphony and Tricentis, it was everyone saying, hey, the old way was doing scripted test automation. The new way would be this approach for continuous testing. And the only way you can get to continuous testing would be through this model based approach. This may sound boring right now that I'm telling you this, but this is like the way that we would go about phrasing the old way of script based automation, new ways continuous testing. But how do you achieve continuous testing? You do the things that we provide you with Tricentis. And then that way, we're not coming in and saying, hey, we do test automation. We're saying we do this totally different thing that it puts at least into people's heads this like new way of thinking about the problem that they have. Key factor, it was everyone talking about machine identity management and the fact that you need to manage all these identities. And it was like, yes, okay, that's like the status quo is certificate and machine identity management. What's the elevated thing that we can help you with at your company? And what we phrased it around was that you don't just need machine identity management, you need a crypto agility platform. Because as your algorithms get more and more into the post quantum world, they could break really easily. They're vulnerable to attack more easily. If you don't have something that allows you to be agile in a post quantum world, then you're gonna fall on your face. With data observability, when we were talking about what's the current way of how data engineers react to data problems or C-suites react to data problems, it's very reactive, right? It's very reactive and slow to resolve, slow to detect. We come in and we paint a new picture of saying we have a shift left proactive approach to this problem, and here's how this shift left approach is very different than the current state of this at rest motion. And so obviously I'm in B2B technical spaces. Like that's where I thrive. I'm not in B2C. I'm not in B2B project management software. There's a lot of those out there that may seem like very straightforward. I'm in the areas of I'm speaking to developers and security architects and engineering teams. So you have to make it a simple story, but then be able to then highlight the capabilities you have, because you're not going to be able just to say glossy things without them asking you very important questions. And then that's where my product marketing background comes in on the technical side.
I would imagine that getting your foot in the door, so to speak, isn't that easy, given that this may not be a high priority for some of the technical teams that you're talking to.
Yeah.
How do you help them realize the cost of glossing over this issue or not proactively handling it?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that we do it on like if we're actually in a deal cycle, there's a few ways that we highlight the value of the ROI of something like a data observability platform. So one of the things we do is we look at the cost of a data downtime issue, very similar to a the cost of a software outage. I know everyone's talking about, I hate to bring this up, but I guess I will. Everyone knows about what happened with CrowdStrike, right?
Mhm.
That was an issue that happened in the world. I know they responded very well to it, but it's just been all over the news. It was related to a software bug, a software defect that if they had done more of a risk-based testing approach, maybe they could have caught that bug before it affected all these things, potentially maybe. But there's a real cost associated with the software bug, right? We saw it all. We saw it all in the news, right? A lot of times that happens internally that we don't even hear about, or that happens for an hour of a time, not days at a time, or weeks at a time, where these things go bad. But they always have a cost associated to it. So the cost of the software being down or a defect in production, that same type of cost analysis for a software delivery defect is very similar for a data defect or a data bug or data downtime. And so we have calculations that kind of go back and say, hey, how many times did you guys experience late deliveries for your data SLAs? How many times did you not catch a pipeline that should have been executed earlier this morning and you didn't find out that it didn't execute until 3 days, 3 days later? How many times did you expect a schema to come across to a table in the correct format and it didn't come across and everyone's confused? Or how many times did you have a dashboard that was asking to be refreshed and it wasn't refreshed, or made bad decisions based off of bad data, right? All those things relate to a cost of a data incident. So we have ways to calculate that to showcase it that way. aside from just like the overall cost of a defect for data quality or a data incident that goes on, we also calculate the mean time to detection and mean time to resolution. So MTTD versus MTTR. So I just had a conversation with one of our software customers. Hopefully, we'll have the case study out soon. It's in review. So hopefully, by this time this podcast comes out, I can point to it. I can't mention their name right now, but a very well known company, software company. And one of the things they had mentioned to me was that Databand basically made their time to detection down to zero
Hmm.
because we were able to automatically tell them exactly when a defect or a data incident happened, and then tell them what the resolution could be based off the error logs that they had. And so even if, let's say, they eventually found these data incidents that occurred, it's a matter about like how fast did you find it and how fast did you resolve it. Very similar to how a lot of application observability tools are out there today. We do that same thing, but for data pipelines and data incidents. And so those are two ways that we look at, both from a let's catalog how many times you had an issue with a data incident, and then how long does it take you to detect something and then resolve it, and what's the delta between that in man hours and issues that could have occurred before you even got to resolving that issue. And then from an awareness perspective, even if let's say that those are like really good things that they're agreeing on, say yes, we're good to go, we agree with all those things from an ROI basis. um, that's actually when you get into the deal cycle. But outside of that, we have to get creative about how we bring data observability awareness to these groups.
Mhm.
So we do that through a lot of different ways, but I would say if we roll it up into a few areas, one is we did full campaigns that were related around third party validation with different data creators in the space. And data observability, it still to this day it's an up and coming category. It's a Gartner recognized category in the data and AI space, but it's still immature in its space. So how do you get the word out around what observability is, how it's different than traditional data quality and data reliability? They may already say we already have that, we don't need anything like that. One is getting awareness out through third party validation. So that's where we partner with a lot of data creators that are out there in the space that have authority on the technical angle of data quality and data reliability, where we're able to come on their podcast, come on their webcast, they do reviews of our software, all those types of things, so that they get an idea that, hey, we're not just saying what we're saying, we're getting these unbiased viewpoints from leaders in the space that you all probably follow. So that's one. And that's more of like a bottoms up approach perspective. Two is another bottoms up approach perspective where we went to a lot of open source conferences, summits, group meetups that we had. Like we've had some in Tel Aviv and New York and different places. We built those kind of more tech community focused meetups to where people could come, have a beer, have a pizza, learn a technical session on how to deploy Apache Airflow in a Kubernetes environment, right? Everyone loves that. And then we would then position Databand against that or in that same category and say, hey, the problem deploying Airflow is really hard, it's really challenging. It's open source. We tie into a lot of the open source technologies, so you can make sure that when you actually are running these things, you have this level of observability to tell you when things go wrong. So tying into more of the technical community, going to the places where they're going to be, get our name out that way. And then the last thing I would say is what we've done is we've really tried to at the exec level is bring this top of mind and tying it to a data governance initiative. So data governance, big category, revolves around like access controls and data quality, data reliability. Parts of it can revolve around security, cataloging data, and observability we view as another pillar of data governance. And so if there are data governance initiatives going on, there's probably not a data observability initiative, but there could be a data governance initiative that's going on in the organization. We can attach it to that higher level top down push, and it gets us more credibility because now we're speaking in terms of observability for your governance strategy versus observability as this standalone thing that they probably don't have budget for and they don't really care
Mm.
about unless it's top of mind, right?
If people were to say, look at this issue and try to address it with perhaps with a DIY approach as opposed to commercial tools, what sort of factors are running through their heads as they weigh these things up?
Yeah. So what we do is we like to talk about there's alerting and monitoring, and there's observability. Alerting and monitoring are part of observability.
Mhm,
They're not exactly what all observability does. But alerting and monitoring is what we classify as in a DIY approach is very static,
mhm,
reactionary, and it's noisy at a lot of times. And so if we walk into a opportunity, they'll usually say something about we have some basic monitoring in place, we have some basic alerting that's set up, but it doesn't really give us context of what's actually going on with the product. And so an example of this would be like, hey, we had a pipeline, data pipeline, and it said that it failed. Observability goes 10 steps more and says, hey, this pipeline is connected to this pipeline, which is connected to this data set. Hey, when this failed, it impacted all these things downstream. And oh, by the way, here's the error message and here's the logs that can give you detailed analysis of how to go and fix it. And oh, by the way, this wasn't a static alert that we set up. It was a data anomaly alert so that we have this ML detection technology that's constantly running and training itself so that we can tell when a pipeline looks wrong and deviates from its behavior and it's not set up in the static motion. So observability doesn't give you just like the what happened. It's like the what, the why, where it happened, who it's affecting downstream, and then all the data around it to make it more predictable in the future.
mhm,
And yeah, at any point, everyone's got DIY, right? Everyone's got a DIY solution for everything. And so you have to give credence to what they're saying and saying, yep, we understand a lot of our customers have at least some level of monitoring in place,
mhm.
but here's how observability is unlike just this traditional static monitoring.
And you talked about your strategic narrative approach within the company. I'm curious, how does storytelling come into play as you talk with potential customers? In that, how are you crafting not just scenarios but also compelling stories that actually resonate with some of the engineering teams you're speaking with?
Yeah, the narrative, and this is where I tell people to go take a look at. If you just Google narrative design, you'll see a lot of details of that framework. But that framework is just like the base
Mhm,
of what you need to go back to. And so, Vinay, if somebody said, "Hey, what does Databand do?" I should be able to tell this story with no slides, no nothing, and be able to tell the big change, how it's impacted our customers, why they can't adapt. Here's this new way. Here's why that new way is hard, and here's how Databand comes in to solve that. I should be able to just repeat that off like very quickly. But when it gets into, okay, how are we going to then turn that into a PowerPoint deck, or how are we going to turn that into particular messages per personas based off our ICP? That's where the copywriting and messaging come off of that
mhm,
narrative. And so obviously, when we have the narrative is a narrative we can speak from a user all the way to the C suite and then understand that. But when we get into, okay, now that we've told the story and people are nodding along that, yes, I understand. I totally get that these are my problems and I haven't thought about this new way. I understand how you fit into this. Then you got to basically change the message depending on who's in the room, right? For us, what we do is we go directly into the data engineering or data platform team. And the message from the narrative is, hey, here's a big change, but here's how simple it is. The database can be dropped into your environment and we're not having to replace anything in your tool stack. And so what we do is we tie into this bigger player or ecosystem that's in the data space right now, which is the modern data stack. And so we're coming in and we're saying, we're not just, this is the story we're going to solve or we're going to solve for you, but here's how we play specifically with the tools that are in your environment today. So we're not telling you you have to rip things out or replace things. We just get dropped in. And here's the 4-step process that gets you to having steady state data observability from day one. So that's how we would communicate, or is how I build my messages. Start with a narrative, get to the sales deck, but then each message that we're going to say to each group is going to be different depending on what they're really interested in, right?
mhm. And in terms of actually going forward, are you recommending like a pilot test on a specific data set, for example, within the company in order to test out and provide proof of concept, or is it more of a wider rollout and application?
And you're talking about like how to activate the narrative design. Is that what you're saying?
That's activate that, but in terms of actually proving the power of data observability to a company, are you
Mhm.
also allowing for perhaps a pilot test, if you will?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. I didn't know if you were talking about narrative design or the actual product. Yeah. So for Databand, there's again just the way that we go to market, right? Is there's really two top and bottom of funnel.
Mhm,
Top and bottoms up. Didn't mean top of funnel. Bottoms up approach, top down approach. So top down approach is since IBM acquired Databand, we have access to a lot of customers that have a mixture of different technologies in their environment today. So the example of that could be a major bank that's using a lot of open source technology, plus a lot of IBM technology, plus a lot of third
mhm,
party technology that's out there. We can tie into all those things, and we would go to the strategic account executives, educate them on what Databand does, how it ties into the overall data story for IBM, and an easy way to slot in Databand in these accounts. The bottoms up approach, and that would usually turn into a POC or a trial or something.
mhm,
The bottoms up approach, we actually have a lot of different options for self service and for trial in itself. And so we have really three ways to interact with our product. You've got the interactive product tour, which is basically you've seen a lot of these probably on the websites where they're click through. Hey, you click on this, it shows the product here. It's more of a painted HTML page, looking like the product, feeling like the product, but it's more limited in what you can do. So it's take me through this product tour of different use cases for using data observability for data sets or data pipelines, or
mhm,
looking at it on a individual basis for graphs and things. Then the other one is a sandbox experience. So it's a full sandbox. So you log in, you have the application right in front of you. You can click around. It's all read only though. So we're showing you live pipeline feeds that are coming in. We're showing you live data sets, live alerts, all those things that are there. But you can't interact with and set up
mhm.
an alert or set up your own integration, right? And that's a 14-day trial. That's really to get people to go. I really understand how this works. I like this experience. I want to learn more. I want to book a demo. I want to do a meeting with you all. And then the last part would be like a trial, so a full trial. So starting from, hey, here's 30 days. You can set up your own trial. You can pay with a credit card at the end if you like. Just want to have the basic capabilities, and then you're off and running. We monitor all the users and their behavior so we can get better and better at what's converting and what areas we need to fix in each of these interactive demo, sandbox, and trial environments.
Okay. And as you have these conversations, are you also running into concerns about your platform potentially replacing jobs or disrupting their existing tech stacks?
Yeah, we that's it's rare that we would our product we looked at as something that would replace a data engineer
Mhm,
or an ML engineer, because what our product is doing is that we're basically giving you five data engineers for the price
mhm,
of one or
mhm,
half of one, depending on what package that you get. That is fully dedicated to maintaining and looking at fixes for your data pipeline, so you don't have to do that. So
mhm,
it's very similar to a software developer. Like a software developer, like what do they like to do? They like to write code. They don't like to fix bugs constantly. They don't like to have their code be butchered and say that it's wrong and you need to fix things and all that. They want to write code. They want to build stuff. Data engineers are very similar. They want to move data. They want to build different data platforms and get the data to the right space at the right time and curate the data. They don't want to be constantly fixing and maintaining their data pipelines, not catching bugs, not catching data incidents, being yelled at for a data delivery that was late. So Databand is really a helper for these data engineering teams, and it's a simple product that has a lot of value to it because we just tie directly into the metadata, not the actual data itself,
mhm.
and we can alert on all these different things that go on. So you don't have to worry about things going bad. You can just focus on building pipelines, having database catch things for you, then you make your adjustments, and then you can continue on in a peaceful manner knowing that we're catching things that you may not be aware of.
Okay, brilliant. And I'm also curious, how do you use ROI calculators and total cost of ownership assessments in your overall sales process?
Yeah, so we have a ROI calculator actually on the Databand website. It was built from the discussion that I was talking to you. I'm actually pulling it up right now. It's built off of some of the stuff that I mentioned earlier about how do we look at the cost of a data incident, but also like how many times, like how many, what's the percentage of data engineering times are spent finding the root cause analysis or root cause of the issues? How much time are your data engineers spent resolving these issues? And getting an idea of how many data engineers they have right now, looking at what that cost per hour could be of them resolving or detecting and
Mhm.
resolving things, and going, hey, like you're spending X amount of money throughout this whole year finding bugs, fixing data incidents, when you could have spent half of that time actually dedicated just to building and releasing new data for our data initiatives, right?
Mm.
So being able just to do that is a really good way to do it, just based off of just the human resource time spent on these things. Basically, you're saying, hey, you're paying your data engineers a lot of money. Let's have them focus on things that drive business value and not just fixing defects constantly.
Mhm. Brilliant. And also, you mentioned that IBM had acquired Databand. Could you speak to your experience of going through that acquisition and bringing Databand into the IBM space and all that it entails beyond just the branding side of things? And also, if it required you to perhaps slightly rethink your strategic narrative as well.
Yeah, so I would say first of all, the acquisition was great. We were the first company in the data observability space to be acquired. So there's a lot of other observability companies out there today that are probably they're point solutions or they're partnering majorly with other solutions that IBM has in their data fabric portfolio. And there's probably going to be some consolidation in the next few years, probably. But no, it was great to get acquired by. Obviously, it's one of the most recognizable brands in the world. They're leading the space in AI and data and quantum computing. So all really like bleeding edge stuff that IBM is working on. When they acquired us, the way it works is the way it worked was we had it was standard for business for a while. So during that time, there's a period before you actually become fully a part of IBM. And when that happens, there you look at things like, okay, how can we run databand specific plays within inside of IBM to the current customers that they're doing, while also figuring out how databand can be promoted to our own customers within
Mhm.
IBM. And so obviously as a startup, we didn't have nearly the amount of customers that IBM has. That's just not, we did not have that obviously. So what was cool about that was we had brand new access to really interesting enterprise use cases for data observability that we didn't have access to before. So that was really fun to navigate that. And then the other side, IBM had really been pushing a new product led growth initiative across all of their products. And so Databand was already doing a lot of this PLG, inbound motion, trials, sandbox experience, all this stuff before IBM had acquired us. And so we were able to be plugged into that PLG program. They have a whole full program over here at IBM dedicated to all the different products that are in these programs. And we were able to just slot in to that and keep the wheels moving and more of that bottoms up approach that we've been talking about up until this point. And so those were like really good things. The way our narrative had to change slightly was that now that we're part of IBM, we're not just databand anymore, right? So we're databand within
Mhm.
IBM's data and AI, and specifically in their data fabric division. So data fabric, data mesh, all these other names you want to call it,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it. It's a suite of architecture or a suite of products and services that's backed up by hybrid architecture that's powered by IBM. And all of that revolves around all the different data services that you need to build an AI ML product or achieve your AI strategy. It's basically the foundation for reliable data. So what Data Fabric does, it's got things like data integration tools like Data Stage. It's got lineage tools and data governance tools like IBM Knowledge Catalog and Manta, master data management. There's so many different things that Data Fabric does. What it didn't have an observability component. And what we're able to do is tie not just a single point solution of, hey, you need data observability, data quality problems, use us. We now can go to market and say, hey, we're part of this full fabric within IBM. So if you want to buy us and just use Databand, that's great. But we also have all these other services that we play nice with within IBM Data Fabric that just gives us more conversational points. And it's not just a point solution discussion that we were having prior.
Certainly. This has been a fascinating chat, Ryan, but I'm also curious, in this space of data quality and data observability, are there perhaps a couple of aspects that you find that doesn't get much airtime or doesn't get talked about very much? If so, what would they be?
Yeah, I would say that data quality is traditionally viewed in a static data at rest point in time to see if the data is accurate or not.
Mhm.
What we would say, and this is where I think things get overlooked, is the fact that there's a lot of data quality tools that monitor data quality when it's at rest. But what we say is once it's at rest, you're doing these SQL checks against it and so on. It's probably already being consumed by now. And the further you go down in the data journey of it getting closer and closer to production, the more costly it's going to be. Just very similar to the same thing with software quality. Each stage from development to integration to testing to deployment, the further it goes before it gets to production, the more costly it is. And so we like to highlight the fact that data quality, data reliability should be more of a shift left initiative. It should be something you should be tying into and alerting on data problems at the source, not when it's actually at rest. And so we call that data quality in motion or data reliability in motion. Those things. So figuring out how to catch data in motion issues versus data at rest issues, because we know it's going to help prevent issues earlier and not later in that process. So that's what I would say is like the big thing that I think people miss about that. And data observability is it's going to be a no brainer for most organizations, probably in the next 2 or 3 years, similar to how something like Datadog, New Relic, and Instana, Dynatrace, these observability products that are in the cloud and looking at applications. Data is the new oil, right? So those same concepts of things that go on in the application observability space need to happen in the data space because that's where all the focus is right now.
Brilliant. And to wrap things up, if you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
I would say I know we jumped back and forth between kind of what Databand does and my journey and some marketing strategies as well, or just what we do here. I would say that one of the biggest takeaways is to relook at your messaging. And for marketing folks that are listening, go through that narrative design process because you're going to figure out right away if your story resonates or it doesn't. And 9 times out of 10, people just assume that their story is going to resonate. And they're really telling a story that's a me too and a commodity conversation versus hey, this is how we're different. This is how we're unique. This is the new way of doing something that makes you stand out. And I would say definitely do that because it's a fun process to do. It's not this grueling data analysis process of looking at pipeline and seeing if you have pipeline coverage and making sure that you're looking at your conversions from lead to MQL to SQL and all that other stuff. This gets back to just the foundation of, are we resonating? Are you even resonating? And it's really important that you are always questioning that to make sure that you're not leaving stuff on the table.
Ryan, if listeners are curious, want to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
You can look me up on LinkedIn. It's just LinkedIn, Ryan Yackel, if you want to learn more. I write articles here and there, and I've done a few podcasts this year as well. So if you want to listen to any of the topics that are on those podcasts, that's good to listen to as well.
Okay, well, we'll include a link to your profile in the show notes. Ryan, thank you so much for doing this. It's been terrific.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.